Welcome back to our beat-by-beat breakdown of Thomas Pynchon's Against the Day. Today, we are analyzing the summary of pages 171 to 198, focusing on Episode 8. In our last session, we watched the Chums of Chance fail their organization-wide mandate. They were unable to prevent the Vormans expedition from delivering a mysterious Arctic antiquity to New York's Museum of Museology. Once removed from its habitat of blizzards and ice storms, the ruined spirit of the figure escaped. It brought chaos and destruction to the city, resorting to urban forms of terror like mass panic, social unrest, and catastrophic property damage. The supernatural threat of the figure exists alongside a more human corruption, the capitalist elite. At the top of this hierarchy sits the Vibe family. As a sophomore at Yale, Kit Traverse meets his benefactor, Scarsdale Vibe, for the first time. They meet at a local hotel to avoid the raucous crowds in town for the Yale-Harvard football game. Scarsdale expresses total disappointment in his own sons and suggests that Kit could one day take over Vibe Corp. Kit, however, recognizes the dark origins of Scarsdale's wealth and refuses the offer. Kit's suspicions are grounded in reality. During the visit, Kit hears a dark confession from Fleetwood Vibe. While in Africa, Fleetwood forced a local man to jump down a mine shaft at gunpoint. He now lives in fear of cosmic retribution. The figure brings chaos to the streets, but the Vibe family's wealth is built on a foundation of colonial murder. This same corporate machinery is now being deployed in the American West. In Denver, Detective Lew Basnight faces his most difficult assignment yet, investigating a notorious anarchist known as the Kieselguhr Kid. Lew discovers that detective agencies treat these unsolved cases like financial instruments. Nate Privet eventually admits that the longer an investigation takes, the more profit they extract from their mine owner clients. The manipulation goes deeper. Lew scales stacks of activist files. He finds evidence of double agents, operatives on the company payroll posing as anarchists. He begins to suspect that the bombings themselves are false flag operations. State authorities and citizen militias have joined the usual strikebreakers. Even the Ku Klux Klan works directly for mine managers to suppress labor. Lew concludes that law enforcement has been replaced by a full-scale corporate civil war, fought on behalf of the railroads. Lew quits the case and falls into an addiction to the hallucinogenic explosive cyclomite. While wandering the trail, he survives a literal dynamite assassination attempt and wakes up in a distorted, reconstituted world. Two British tourists, Nigel and Neville, rescue Lew and smuggle him to England. They depart just before a hurricane destroys Galveston, where 6,000 people were killed. Lew survives his time in the West only by realizing that the anarchist threat is a rigged game. He physically flees the continent to escape the corporate machinery. In the Colorado mountains, Webb Traverse is promoted to shift boss, while his family falls apart. Webb's daughter, Lake, flees his anger to live in Silverton. She reminisces about her siblings while fantasizing about killing her father with dynamite. A broken Webb seeks community in his labor union, which sends him to a new mining town. There, he takes a young worker named Deuce Kindred under his wing as a surrogate son. The company exploits this trust. A representative secretly hires Deuce to assassinate Webb in exchange for a fee and a ticket out of the district. Deuce and his sidekick Sloat Fresno prepare the ambush. As a company inspector accuses Webb of stealing ore, Deuce and Sloat strike Webb from behind. The brutal physical attack is accompanied by psychological betrayal. Webb calls out the names of his actual sons while watching the light over the ranges drain away. Deuce and Sloat do not kill him immediately. They tie Webb up and depart for the desolate wilderness of Jessamine, Utah. Webb seeks genuine human solidarity and trust within a corporate ecosystem that financially incentivizes betrayal. This misplaced faith leads directly to his ruin. These two protagonists move in opposite directions. Lew Basnight achieves an intellectual awakening and escapes, while Webb Traverse seeks a surrogate family and falls into a fatal trap. An economic reality connects these events. The wealth of the Eastern elite directly engineers violence in the West. The anarchist label is a weaponized racket to justify corporate violence. Chaos is manufactured to ensure gold and silver flow back east. In turn-of-the-century America, family and truth are no longer absolute. They have been reduced to tradable commodities. We started this section running from a mythic ice monster, but the men in tailored suits calmly paying for murder in the mines represent a threat far greater than any supernatural beast.